In the pitch for congestion pricing, Governor Hochul and the MTA have said this plan will be beneficial for all New Yorkers. There are those who drive in from outside Manhattan who might argue that the plan is not beneficial for all, that it disproportionately harms their communities. One of those voices belongs to Staten Island City Councilman Joe Borelli, who's with us in studio this morning. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning.
This plan was paused. There were skeptics that wondered what pause meant, and we now know that pause means it's back on after the election.
Well, it was an indefinite pause, right? It was a deliberate attempt to trick voters into thinking that some of their fears about congestion pricing weren't going to happen. And it was the typical bait and switch. I'm trying to teach my son's flag football team how to be this deceptive when they do flea flickers and reverses. They can't figure it out.
How are they doing?
We need Hochul and we need Jano to come out here and teach them how to do trick plays. Look, it's not a coincidence that a week after the election, they came out and relaunched congestion pricing. This is why. This is the epitome, if not just why, it's the epitome of why people hate politicians. It's like divorce lawyers, used car salesmen, and politicians. And it's because of deliberate attempts to circumvent reality, circumvent the rules, and trick your constituents into what you want to do.
They say this is short-term pain for a long-term gain for the entire region.
Well, let's look at the top project they put on their own website, right? The 2nd Avenue subway. 2nd Avenue subway, $2.5 billion per mile. Let me ask you this. How far over budget you think they were compared to other cities, Pat? Any idea? You think it's double the cost of other cities?
Oh, I mean, the MTA's construction costs are off the charts.
Patrick,
yeah.
8 times. It cost 8 times more to build a mile of subway here in New York as it does in 6 countries in Europe. That was an NYU study. You should have asked Jano when he was here before why his agency is so inefficient at delivering projects before they ask my constituents to pay a single dollar more. And let me tell you.
I've asked him before, by the way. He says they are more on time and more on budget.
Yeah, they're getting
than ever.
better.
But that's not to say that they're as good as they could be.
And if they were only double the cost of Paris, I'd say maybe okay. Right? But let me just go into what they did in Staten Island. Before the MTA, we had additional spurs of our railroad line. We had a second North Shore line. We had ferries all over the city. And the MTA didn't actually continue any of those services. We still have 30-minute headways on our one damn line. Right?
Yeah.
They gave us a bridge. The MTA built us the biggest bridge in New York Harbor, the Verrazano Bridge. They didn't put a rail line on it. They said, you guys on Staten Island, you use your cars. They did this to us, and now they have the audacity to charge us more for using the only way we have to get to parts of the city.
Can we all back up for a second, though? There's a lot that we disagree on. Can we agree that traffic is absolutely terrible sometimes?
I'm glad you asked. Congestion pricing actually puts more traffic in my community. If you ask my constituents a big concern, it's traffic. Congestion pricing adds cars, adds trucks, not just to Staten Island, but other parts around the city. And by the way, those trucks and cars bring pollution.
Just to pause, the theory is that the vehicles that we're cutting through Manhattan will not, and they'll use the Cross Bronx or
they'll use the Staten Island Expressway.
Yeah.
Correct. So we have more pollution on Staten Island. It's in their own report, right? So parts of the city, point conceded, right? They're going to get better air, that's fine. But my constituents on Staten Island, most of them are in a distressed community, will get actually more congestion and more pollution. That is not fair to us. That is fundamentally wrong. And that's why we are so vehemently opposed to it.
So the MTA handed out some maps at the press conference on Thursday, and those maps looked at every county in the region. And I was talking with Jano Lieber about this earlier this morning. He said, you've got on Staten Island 23,000 people taking public transit to Manhattan every day, and only 6,000 driving private cars from Staten Island to Manhattan every day. It's a lot of fight over 6,000 people. Why has this become an outsized political issue when you could be fighting the cost of the toll on the Verrazano, when you could be fighting the salt tax deduction?
We have. The MTA board votes to raise it every time.
But why is it that that's just accepted, that the Verrazano toll is accepted as a high toll, but congestion is getting so much pushback?
I mean, this is a better question for Mr. Lieber than it is for me. I mean,
Sure.
His MTA board, appointed the majority by the governor, has said it's fine to continue raising tolls year after year, year after year. By the way, to the people out there, congestion pricing, they're going to do the same thing to you. The rise in the toll is already in the mix for the next 5 years, the next 6 years.
Oh, yeah,
so it's not $9. It's $9 today. It's going to be $15 by 2028.
This is the introductory price.
Right, so this is just the buy-in, right? This is how you get Netflix free for a month or something like that, right? But it really is fundamentally unfair when the MTA has failed Staten Island. Do you think they're adding more bus service or less on Staten Island? Because they're actually closing one of our bus depots right now as we speak. This is the fundamental unfairness. So we have 23,000 people who take express buses to Manhattan. Before the MTA, under its current iteration, we used to have a lot more. It's only been through service cuts and their inability to run service through our park and rides that the number actually shrunk. Other boroughs, public transit is rising as service improves. Staten Island public transit is shrinking as service decreases.
Are you hopeful that Trump and his administration will find a way to reverse what happens on January 5th?
You know, if you come to my house, I think I have a candle for Trump. I have a candle for Phil Murphy. I have a candle for Josh Gottheimer. We're all hoping, Mike Lawler, a bunch of these people. We're all hoping that there is a death of 1,000 cuts of this. Mike Mulgrew, you'd never thought me and the UFT president. I have a shrine in my house to Michael Mulgrew. And he doesn't live too far away. He might appear like the Lord at my door one day. But there's a lot of people who oppose this for the right reasons. And by the way, I just read in CBS News that you have Hakeem Jeffries, who, for the most part, this indefinite pause was done to protect some of these House seats, right? That's the sort of spoken secret of why this happened. He just came out the other day on CBS News and said Democrats need to talk more about affordability and out-of-borough economic needs. This is a great example.
No, that's the big picture, right?
This is the big picture. You know, the Democratic Party will continue losing seats if they're focused on one borough, Manhattan, and they're willing to throw everyone else under the bus that they don't even provide in Staten Island.
Good to have you in studio. I think the last couple of times we've had you on Zoom from home because you've been in the midst of mourning parenting.
Yep, yeah, indeed. Yeah.